Hello ACE Guides, and welcome to your brief guide on how to best annotate for excellent comparison. Getting this process down pat will absolutely pave the way for you to getting that A+ on your essay. First up, what is good comparison? Good comparison is more than just similarities and differences. It is about how the author structures their ideas, how the texts are a response to or product of their context, and the ways in which meaning is communicated about similar themes and ideas. Here is where knowing your themes, symbols, and views and values really well can help you. We highly recommend using the Lotus diagram on our resources page or the mind map of how to compare to help you with this process. In our example today, we are going to use the 7 Stages of Grieving and the Longest Memory as our focus texts. However, these skills are really broad and you can absolutely apply them to your own text as well, and we recommend you do this as you listen along. When we annotate, it is best to move from the micro to the macro. We like to think of this as moving from the words or the language all the way out to the ideas on a page. This is an important step in ensuring you capture all of the elements of the text. For example, we suggest you start by looking at language choices, looking at verbs and adjectives and connotations. Broaden it out to literary devices such as metaphors, similes, and alliteration. Search for references to themes, symbols, and ideas in the subtext, and finally, link it to the author's views and values at the end. Let's take a look at the first page of chapter 1 in The Longest Memory. We want to draw your attention to the theme of dehumanization in this chapter. Whitechapel is grappling with the grief of his son's brutal death, one that he himself had a hand in, and he later labels himself a Judas in the chapter. Not only is this a story of personal grief, but a snapshot of how violence, brutality, and slavery impact the community of slaves on a plantation, and more broadly captures the trauma experienced and passed down through generations. Here, Whitechapel tries to strip himself of his past life and identity and deny himself any form of happiness or joy. This is so he can succumb to namelessness and numbness in the pursuit of atonement for his part in Chapel's death. He tries to become a model slave, which highlights the extreme level of compliance to a system that is senseless and unjust. When we look at our page, we can see that I've circled various adjectives and verbs that build up in this particular scene. It demonstrates to us the violence and trauma the slaves are experiencing even in their sleep. We notice that Whitechapel says whinny like horses and bray like mules. This is an example of dehumanizing language, which likens him to an animal. We will now compare it to the first page, scene 2, titled Sobbing in the 7 Stages of Grieving. It opens with another nameless character here, the woman in this case, who shifts between extreme emotions, all while sobbing loudly on the stage. Notice how these emotions vacillate between sadness and love to grief, and eventually a feeling of nothingness. Here lies the temptation to give in to feeling nothing in light of her personal grief, which is her nana that has passed away, and the grief of the Indigenous community more broadly. Note that structurally, there are stage instructions that we must take into account as well, and in this case, these words are being projected on the screen behind her. They are not in a paragraph, but more in a list, all the way to the end where nothing is repeated. It seems that the woman is moving through a procession of feelings until she eventually becomes numb towards the end. There is a temptation here to give into this numbness, but as we see from scene 3, this is not the case. Once you have annotated effectively, it's really important that you compare the pair. We recommend using a Venn diagram for this as it is visual, and this is what we love here at ACE Guides. Note how both texts explore grief through language and the idea of numbness and namelessness. Whilst The Longest Memory demonstrates Whitechapel's deep grief and removal of identity and denial of identity, 7 Stages explores how the temptation to feel nothing at all does not outweigh the importance of the woman's story, which she does decide to tell, regardless of her pain. Once you have done that, it is time to evaluate. To consolidate your knowledge, we really recommend writing this up in a series of dot points, or even better, a paragraph. If you would like access to a sample paragraph, please comment below and we will send you one. Even better, tag a friend and let them know about this invaluable resource to help them ace their essay. As always, if you want more, subscribe and don't forget to check out our Instagram.